Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Bobby with Tech360.tv. We're here at Gardens by the Bay, one of the most beautiful photogenic places here in Singapore, to talk about a camera that we feel is more of a photographer's tool over anything else. This is our review of the Canon EOS R. So let's get down to this camera. First and foremost, we got to talk about the design. Now, I mentioned this in my first impressions review, and I feel like I got to bring it up again, but this is a robust, solid feeling camera. Out of all the mirrorless cameras that have come out over the last couple of years, we're talking about Nikon, of course, Sony, and now Canon, the three that everybody's comparing these to, I feel that the Canon is the most robust, most DSLR feeling camera out of the three. And that's a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you like in a camera. The grip on this is fantastic. As you can tell, all my fingers are grabbing here. I don't have the falling pinky off on this. It feels really, really good in the hands. Now, this magnesium and plastic body feels solid, durable. It's weatherproof, right? So we've got something in this. Canon has really taken a good thought about how to make this design better, more durable, more robust, but even more future-proof. Talking about that, we also got to talk about the lens for a moment. Now, this is the kit lens. This is the 24-105 f4 kit lens. Now, you're thinking usually kit lenses are maybe they're cheap or they're not really good quality. I think we're seeing a change from camera manufacturers in this regard because this kit lens is fantastic. You got image stabilization that's built into this. It's a 24-105, so you have a lot of your focal lengths already covered. It's f4 all the way up. F4 might be a little bit slow depending on what your shooting style is, but nonetheless, you're going to get some phenomenal images. But let's talk about the camera. Let's step back for a second and talk about the camera a bit more. The EVF is a 3.69 million dot EVF. Beautiful, stunning, clear. It really looks great. The touchscreen on the back of this, as you can tell, it's a swivelly touchscreen. It's the only one in the mirrorless lineup that's doing this right now in the full frame sensor lineup. And it's touchscreen, it's clear, crisp, great colors. You're going to love this screen. But there's a whole different button layout on this camera that might confuse you or might not, depending on how well-versed you are in the Canon world. Now, I haven't used the Canon since my Canon 20D many years ago. Using this again, I had to relearn some stuff. Not a bad thing, but just had to let you know. If you can see near the grip, we've got a lot of buttons happening right here. I mentioned this in my first impressions review. Get that thumb and get that forefinger ready to go because get them stretched out because there's a lot of maneuvering you're gonna be doing on this. Moving to the back of this, you're going to notice we've got a touchscreen bar right here. You've got a dial pad here, info, trash, play. You've got magnification, AF on, and then you got some assignable buttons that you got over here, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty bare bones when you look at it. I mean, but then again, a lot of these buttons are customizable, which we'll get down to when we talk about the menu system. But talking about the mode dial, on most cameras, you're gonna find white markers or so forth that let you know which mode you're in. Canon got rid of that. Good or bad, it's up to you, but you will see the mode that you're in based on this LCD display here or on the touchscreen in the back or the EVF. But you know what? Let's get down into the specs of this camera. What's inside of it? We've got a 30.3 CMOS full frame megapixel sensor on this. You've got ISO, I think it's from 100 to 40,000, expandable from 50 on the way all the way up, which you're never gonna get to, but anyway, 100 to 40,000, I would say around 12,000 plus, 20,000 is the max you can really push this camera before you start seeing too much noise to even use it on, but nonetheless, you're good in low light situations. Speed-wise, it's not the fastest camera on the market. You get 8 frames per second in single autofocus mode and 5 frames per second in continuous autofocus. So there are other cameras faster out there. But, you know, real world versus what's on paper is very different. It's called hit rate. And this is something that I've noticed testing a lot of different cameras is there's cameras out there that do 10, 12, 15, 20 frames per second, but your hit rate isn't 100%. It never is. Usually it's 60, 70, 80%. I can say after using this camera, my hit rate is pretty high, and that's mainly due to the dual pixel autofocus on this, which Canon is, I mean, it's legendary. We all know about the dual pixel autofocus, and it is alive and well in this, and it is fast, and it is precise, and it is a joy to use. Okay. Now I want to talk about something else that is the elephant in the room. You see it in all the reviews out there, and it's video, okay? Now, the crop factor on this, as we know, it's a 1.7 crop factor in 4K at 30 frames per second. Everybody complained about it. Why did Canon do this? Now, according to Canon, I asked them this question and they said it was due to the overheating of the camera system. They didn't want it to happen. They wanted you to be able to record video longer. Hence, that's why they actually, I would say, prioritize 1080p versus 4K. So, shooting at 1080, I find, is a very good sweet spot for this. Now, there is no image stabilization in the camera. So people were saying, well, wait a second, that's not gonna be good for video. It's in the lenses, selected lenses, of course, but not in the camera. They have electronic image stabilization. Now, this is a little bit jittery. It's not really natural. It can soften the image a bit, so we recommend not using it. Recommend using a tripod or using something handheld. And nowadays, there's so many extra devices out there that you can use. Or if you're using this lens like that for video at 1080, then put the image stabilization on, you're good to go. Now, talking about video, a lot of people say, well, this is a great vlogging camera, but only if it didn't have this crop on it. Okay. Have you picked up the Canon EOS R? Have you felt it with the 24-105? If you haven't, do so. It's a heavy rig. It's not light. Case in point, if I'm gonna do vlogging like this, right? Now, of course, the 24-105 at 24 millimeters, I should be able to get myself in focus and everything else. There's a crop factor in 4K and 1080p, there's not. But this is heavy. Even if I was holding a Ronin or some sort of gimbal, it's heavy after a while. It's not easy. So if you think about it, for video, my recommendation is you get, of course, the adapter. You get, let's say, a wide angle EF lens. Shoot in 4K, that crop factor is gonna bring you in right nice and close to about a 35 millimeter range, okay? And it's a lot lighter of a system. Look at it from a different perspective and say, hey, wait a second. You know what? Maybe he's got a point. Maybe I put a wider angle lens on this. It's a lighter rig overall. I can actually record longer. Something to think about. So let's talk about the menu system on this camera, because this is where I had a sort of love-hate relationship with the EOS R. When I got it, it was a very different menu system than I've used on other cameras in some ways. Some things I found, oh, I understand where that's at, and other ways I could not find settings I was looking for. I actually had to meet a Canon representative to walk me through it, which I recommend doing, because Canon is trying a lot of new things on this camera. And if you're a Canon user from the past, you might find it a bit confusing. Case in point, video. To find video on this, there is no video icon in the menu system. You actually have to press mode, the mode button, and then the info button on the screen to access the video icons. And then you go into the video settings through there, or you press the Q icon on the screen. And you can see that Canon really wasn't thinking about video on this, which they said they might improve on a future firmware update. They haven't said yes or no to it, but it's something they are considering because it's the feedback they've gotten from a lot of photographers and videographers out there. Now, one mode in this camera that I found very interesting to me, and I haven't seen this in any other Canon camera before, actually Canon said this is the first time they're putting it into a camera, is the FV mode. Now, the FV mode is like an auto mode, but you can also customize it. And what I mean by that is usually, let's say you're in aperture priority or shutter priority mode, you adjust one, everything else adjusts with it, right? But what you can do on this is actually, as you're looking at the mode through the touchscreen or the EVF, you can use the rear dial here, which is right by the mode button. And then you can go to, let's say I want to go to ISO, I want to go to exposure, I want to go to shutter speed, and you can manually adjust them to your liking without messing with any of the other settings, which is quite nice because sometimes cameras in auto mode, for instance, it likes to push ISO up. All cameras like to do this. Likes to push it up for whatever reason, I don't know, but it seems to do that. With this, you can say, look, I want to be at ISO 100. I'm outside, it's daylight. I don't need anything more than ISO 100, but I want a faster shutter speed. Maybe I want a little bit of darker shot, underexposed. You can do that. And there's no issues with that. And actually, that's the mode I've been on ever since I learned about this because it's so intuitive and it works really well. Also, another option in this menu system that I like is the Q icon. Now, the Q, you press on that when you're on this touch screen, and then you can access all the different modes as well. So you can access video in there that way if you want, versus going mode information, but you have it all on the screen to touch and to adjust as you wish. So Canon has thought about a lot of these things, and they're really trying to make a more touch-centric menu system. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was, of course, was the single card slot. Everybody was complaining about it. Why did Canon do this? You know, an SD card could fail. So I asked them this question. I said, you've gotten a lot of heat on this subject. What happened? And they said, look, this is their explanation, not mine. They said, we believe the future is Wi-Fi connectivity and transferring photos to devices, let's say your tablet or your phone, as you're shooting, so it sort of backs it up. Now, they have this feature in the M50. Now, with the M50, there's a button on the camera that automatically syncs your phone to the camera. On the EOS R, not so much. You gotta dig deep into the menu system to activate it, and if you turn one of them off, it doesn't sync up right away. You have to reconnect it again. Now, I have tried it with images, and I have to say that it works very well. It's pretty fast in terms of its transfer rate. And you can transfer, they said, JPEGs and RAW. I just did JPEGs for my demo purposes. And it's great because then at that point, of course, you can share it on Instagram, you know, put it in Lightroom if you want and stuff like that. So there are benefits to it. Of course, that's gonna require battery power. That requires your phone and your camera to be connected during your shooting process. And depending on your phone's battery size, that might be good or bad. It's a choice they made, and I have a feeling probably in the future when they do another mirrorless version, maybe a pro version of this camera, they will have 2 card slots in there. I mean, I think after all the feedback Canon got, I think they realized maybe the market isn't ready for Wi-Fi transfer as the secondary option just yet. Even though it works, maybe we'll put a card slot in there for the time being. But probably the most important factor of this camera I want to touch on is image quality. And a lot of reviews I've read and watched on YouTube, everybody's going through tech specs, they're pushing the cameras to extremes at crazy high ISOs nobody will ever use, showing, oh, there's banding this, or there's this breaking of noise here, and all this kind of stuff. It's overwhelming, but it takes away from the fundamentals and what this camera is really made for, and its great image quality. And if you haven't shot with Canon in a while, try to demo one of these cameras. Take it out if you can for a couple days or a day, rent it, and see the image quality that comes from this. The color science that Canon has in their cameras is, I mean, everybody talks about it, right? These RF lenses here are beautiful. The resolving power is there. It's way beyond 30.3 megapixels, honestly, and I have a feeling Canon's gonna come out with something that's going to blow our minds soon, that's gonna be much higher megapixels, and it's going to complement these lenses even more. But I'm not seeing chromatic aberration on this. I'm not seeing distortion in these lenses. I'm seeing beautiful rendering, skin tone, details it's very sharp for 30.3 megapixels. This is what makes this camera. And you know, that's why I say sometimes we just need to we watch these reviews, even mine included, and you say, okay, take the good and the bad, but get the camera in your hands and shoot with it. Then you understand that this is actually a good camera. No camera's perfect. No camera will ever be perfect. You're not gonna get every spec you want in a camera. So you need to find out what kind of photographer you are, what kind of videographer you are, and then find the tool that works best for you to express what you want the world to see. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Canon EOS R. Leave your comments, suggestions below. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Until the next one, take care. All right, let's grab this. Okay.
Done.
All right. All right, let's go. All right, that's it for the review, man. It's damn hot today here in Singapore. If you haven't been to Singapore, I'll tell you what, year round, you sweat and it's hot. The only difference is it rains more from one season to the next, but that's it. So I'll have to grab a drink. Talk to you in the next one. Take care.